should they be getting a larger share of the revenue in the WNBA?
Yes. I mean, I think the share isn't the right way to look at it because there's so much more revenue in the NBA. I think you should look at it in absolute numbers in terms of what they're making, and they are going to get a big increase in this cycle of collective bargaining, and they deserve it.
It started like a fairy tale. A small-town girl from Iowa, rising through the ranks with an unmatched mix of fire, flair, and fearlessness. Caitlin Clark wasn't just a basketball player, she was a phenomenon. Every arena she stepped into transformed into a sold-out spectacle. Fans traveled hundreds of miles just to see her shoot. Kids wore her number. Broadcasters called her the face of women's basketball. But fame, especially the kind that burns fast and bright, comes with shadows. And by the summer of 2024, those shadows were no longer hiding. Behind the scenes, tension was boiling inside the WNBA. Meetings that once felt like celebrations had turned into battlefields of distrust. The league's biggest stars, players who had carried the sport for years, felt invisible in their own house. They'd fought for respect, equality, and recognition. And now, suddenly, everything revolved around one name, Caitlin Clark. The rookie who shattered viewership records. The rookie who filled seats like never before. The rookie who, according to some, was being treated as if she alone built the league. In locker rooms and private group chats, frustrations brewed. One veteran star, speaking anonymously, said, "It feels like we've been fighting this war for decades, and now everyone's acting like she just arrived and fixed it all. It's insulting." Another added, "The league finally gets the spotlight, and instead of lifting all of us, it's being used to sell her. That's not unity. That's politics." At first, it sounded like typical professional jealousy, but it wasn't. It was deeper, an emotional fracture that reached the core of what the WNBA stood for. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert had long dreamed of this moment. Women's basketball commanding national headlines, sponsorships pouring in, broadcasters fighting for coverage rights. Caitlin Clark was a golden opportunity, a bridge between loyal fans and the mainstream audience. But with every headline that called Clark the savior of women's basketball, the resentment inside the league grew louder. Some players accused Engelbert of favoritism. Others blamed the media for creating a divide between Clark's WNBA and the one that existed before her. And in the middle of it all was Caitlin herself, 22-year-old who just wanted to play basketball. Reporters described her as calm, polite, professional. But behind closed doors, sources say the pressure was suffocating. Every game felt like a test, every foul a national debate. When she was hit hard by veterans on the court, fans cried foul. When she retaliated, critics called her entitled, "Caitlin couldn't win," no matter how many points she scored. And that's when the unthinkable started to happen. Fans began to question whether the WNBA itself was sabotaging its own superstar. 3 tweets. First spark came after that brutal game against Chicago. The hit, the backlash, the silence from the league office. Millions of fans flooded social media asking, why isn't anyone protecting her? Then came the interviews. Players like Angel Reese and Chennedy Carter started speaking out, not directly at Caitlin, but about the double standards in coverage and treatment. Their tone was subtle, but the subtext was clear. There was a growing resentment toward how the league was being run and who it was being run for. Meanwhile, Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA, watched from his side of the empire. Silver had always seen the WNBA as a vital piece of the broader basketball family. But now, it was turning into a PR nightmare. Sponsors were nervous. Analysts debated whether the controversy was good or bad for business. Fans were splitting into camps. And Caitlin Clark? She just kept showing up, head down, trying to prove herself in an environment that suddenly felt colder than ever. One insider close to the Indiana Fever put it bluntly. She's not just playing against other teams. She's playing against the system, the culture, the old guard. But then, quietly, a word began circulating among union leaders and player representatives, a word that would change everything. Lockout. At first, it sounded like a bluff, but whispers grew louder. Discontent was rising not only over Caitlin's treatment, but over pay, marketing control, and the league's direction under Engelbert's leadership. Some players felt they were losing control of the league's identity, replaced by corporate agendas and star-driven marketing. Others simply wanted fairness, a structure that didn't make one rookie the lightning rod for everything wrong and right in the sport. By late summer, meetings between the players' union and league executives were turning tense. Accusations flew, voices were raised, and deep inside the league's headquarters, there was one haunting question no one wanted to say aloud. Had the WNBA's greatest breakthrough also become its breaking point? Because for all the numbers, the ratings, the record-setting ticket sales, there was something fragile underneath it all, something that felt ready to snap. And in the eye of that storm stood a young woman who never asked to be the face of a revolution, but somehow couldn't escape it. By the time the leaves began to turn in early autumn, the cracks inside the WNBA had widened into something much darker. What began as murmurs about favoritism and marketing had evolved into a full-blown identity crisis. Inside the boardrooms of the league's Manhattan headquarters, voices that once spoke in careful optimism now carried a sharp edge. Kathy Engelbert sat at the head of the conference table, surrounded by advisors, PR strategists, and legal counsel. On the walls hung framed photos of league milestones, Lisa Leslie's dunk, Diana Taurasi's championship grin, Sue Bird's farewell moment. Each one represented the legacy of women who had built the league brick by brick. But now, those same pioneers were at the heart of the unrest. Across from her sat representatives from the players' union. Their tone wasn't angry, at least not yet. It was tired. Tired of promises, tired of fighting for recognition, tired of watching the league celebrate one rookie while veterans struggled for media coverage and basic respect. One player rep leaned forward and said quietly, "We love what Caitlin's done for the game, but you've turned her into a shield. Every criticism of the league gets deflected behind her name." Engelbert adjusted her glasses, choosing her words carefully. "Caitlin has brought incredible attention to the league. This is our moment to build momentum, together." But the room didn't move. No nods, no smiles, just silence. Finally, another voice cut through. "Momentum for who, Kathy? Because it feels like it's not for us." The air in the room grew heavier. Behind the polished words and the polite handshakes, there was something raw. Hurt, betrayal, exhaustion. The league that had fought to be taken seriously was now fighting itself. Meanwhile, across town, Adam Silver watched from the NBA's Fifth Avenue offices with growing concern. His advisors had briefed him daily. The WNBA's internal tensions were becoming a public relations firestorm. And while Silver respected Engelbert's leadership, he couldn't ignore the bigger picture. "The league's growth depends on unity," Silver told a close aide. "If the players lose faith in the system, we risk losing everything we've built." Behind closed doors, Silver began reaching out quietly, first to key sponsors, then to player representatives, trying to understand the scale of the problem. The message coming back was consistent and alarming. The players felt unheard, and the commissioner's office seemed more focused on optics than fairness. But even as frustration boiled in private, the public story was spinning out of control. On social media, narratives clashed violently. Caitlin Clark's fans, millions strong, accused veteran players of jealousy and hypocrisy. The veterans' supporters fired back, accusing the league of using race and marketability as dividing lines. The discourse was toxic, the kind that could destroy reputations overnight. And through it all, Caitlin stayed silent. Those close to her described long nights, missed calls, and sleepless mornings. "She reads everything," one teammate admitted. "She tries not to, but she can't help it. She wants to understand why everyone's so angry, why her success hurts people." In one interview, when asked about the criticism, Caitlin gave a simple, exhausted smile. "I'm just trying to play basketball," she said softly. "That's all I've ever wanted." But even that was dissected online. Some called it humble, others called it dismissive. The truth was, Caitlin Clark had become more than a player. She was a symbol, a lightning rod, a political statement disguised as a rookie guard. Every dribble she took, every foul she drew, every endorsement she signed became fuel for someone's argument. Then, as if the tension wasn't enough, whispers began leaking from the players' union about a possible collective action. Not a full lockout, not yet, but something close. A work slowdown. A coordinated statement that would show the league just how fragile its success really was. Sponsors panicked. Networks called for reassurance. ESPN executives demanded clarity from the league. But inside the WNBA offices, clarity was the one thing no one had. Engelbert's advisors urged her to get ahead of the story, to make a bold move that showed leadership and control. But others warned her. Any move could be seen as taking sides. One aide said it plainly. "If you protect Caitlin, the veterans will revolt. If you side with the veterans, the fans will revolt. Either way, someone's going to burn." And as those words hung in the air, Engelbert finally realized this wasn't about one player anymore. It was about trust, about who truly owned the future of women's basketball. The executives who ran it, or the players who bled for it. Still, she made her decision. A press conference was scheduled for the following week. Her team drafted statements, crafted answers, rehearsed tone and timing. Everything was meant to convey control, confidence, calm. But when the day came, nothing went as planned. Reporters filled the room, cameras flashing like lightning. Engelbert began her remarks, thanking fans, celebrating the growth of the sport, reaffirming her commitment to every player, every team. Then came the question she dreaded most. A journalist from The Athletic raised his hand. "Commissioner Engelbert, multiple veteran players have accused the league of exploiting Caitlin Clark's image at the expense of others. Do you acknowledge that perception, and what are you doing to address it?" The room fell silent. Every camera zoomed in, every microphone tilted forward. Engelbert hesitated, just for a second, but long enough for the world to notice. Then she said, "We are proud of all our athletes. Caitlin has brought incredible attention to our league, and that spotlight benefits everyone. This isn't about one player, it's about collective growth." It was the diplomatic answer everyone expected, but it wasn't enough. Within hours, the quote was plastered across social media, dissected by fans, players, pundits, and critics alike. Some called it leadership, others called it gaslighting. Behind closed doors, Adam Silver's phone buzzed nonstop. Sponsors wanted reassurance. Union leaders wanted answers. And in private circles, the word lockout was no longer a whisper. It was a plan. One insider summarized it grimly. The WNBA thought they were building a dynasty. Instead, they built a divide. And in the middle of that divide stood Caitlin Clark, the prodigy turned pariah, carrying the weight of a league that couldn't decide whether to protect her or blame her. By winter, the league was a battlefield disguised as a basketball season. Every game carried more than points or standings, it carried politics. Cameras weren't just filming basketball anymore. They were capturing silent wars between teammates, side glances on the bench, and moments of tension that said more than any interview ever could. The Indiana fever, once a promising story of rebirth, had become the epicenter of chaos. Every move Caitlin Clark made was dissected. Every word she spoke was weaponized. When she smiled after a win, critics called it arrogance. When she hung her head in defeat, they called it weakness. Inside the locker room, the air felt heavy. Players were loyal, but wary. Some admired Caitlin's composure under pressure. Others felt suffocated by the spotlight she carried into every arena. One veteran finally broke the silence after a tough loss, muttering under her breath, "This isn't basketball anymore. It's a circus." The lines spread fast. Within hours, it was quoted on sports radio, debated on ESPN, and turned into memes across social media. Every headline framed Caitlin as the reason for the league's turmoil. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, negotiations between the WNBA and the Players' Union had reached their breaking point. The players wanted a larger share of revenue, better health protections, and, most importantly, a voice in marketing decisions. They wanted to ensure that no single player, no matter how famous, would be turned into the face of the league without collective input. The league's position was simple. The numbers didn't lie. Caitlin Clark's presence had tripled ticket sales, doubled merchandise revenue, and drawn record-breaking TV audiences. To the executives, she was a once-in-a-generation star, the kind that could carry the entire sport into mainstream relevance. But to the players, she had become a symbol of everything they weren't getting. The tension exploded in a closed-door meeting that would later be described by one insider as the night the league fell apart. Engelbert sat across from the union's top representatives, her voice steady but strained. "We all want the same thing: growth, visibility, success. But if we fracture now, everything we've built will crumble." Nneka Ogwumike, a respected veteran and former union president, met her eyes. "With all due respect, Kathy, it's already crumbling. You're just the last one to see it." There was no shouting, no chaos, just quiet devastation. The meeting ended with no resolution. The union walked out, and for the first time in the league's history, a lockout was officially on the table. Word leaked within hours. ESPN broke the story at dawn. WNBA lockout looms as player-owner negotiations collapse. Social media exploded. Fans were stunned. The league that had finally found mainstream attention was now at risk of shutting down its own season. And through it all, Caitlin Clark stayed silent. For days, she avoided the cameras. When reporters asked her to comment, she simply shook her head. The noise was deafening, and she was caught in the middle of it. Loved by millions, resented by many, and understood by almost no one. Her teammates tried to protect her, but even they could see the toll it was taking. One night after practice, Caitlin sat alone in the empty gym, the sound of bouncing basketballs replaced by silence. The lights were dim, her reflection faint on the polished floor. "I didn't ask for any of this," she whispered to no one in particular. But the truth was, she didn't have to ask. The moment she stepped into the league, destiny had already chosen her. That same week, Adam Silver decided he'd seen enough. Quietly, he called Engelbert and requested a meeting. Not as a superior, but as a partner trying to save something precious. When they met, Silver didn't speak like a commissioner. He spoke like someone who had watched too many good leagues destroy themselves from within. "Kathy," he said softly, "you can't let the league become a war between eras. The veterans built the foundation. Caitlin is the spark, but you've let that spark start a fire." Engelbert sighed, weary. "What do you want me to do, Adam? The players think I'm playing favorites. The sponsors want her front and center. The media's turned her into a headline machine. No matter what I do, I'm the villain." Silver paused, then leaned forward. "Then stop trying to win. Start trying to heal." The advice was simple, but it hit hard. In the days that followed, Engelbert began reaching out personally to key players. Not through advisors or press statements, but directly. She listened to the anger, to the exhaustion, to the years of feeling overlooked. Slowly, something began to shift. When Caitlin Clark finally broke her silence, It wasn't in a press conference or a carefully scripted interview. It was at a local youth basketball camp in Iowa. Surrounded by kids who still saw her as a hero, she spoke from the heart. "I love this game," she said, her voice trembling, "and I love every woman who plays it. I know there's been a lot of talk, a lot of noise, but I never wanted to take anything from anyone. I just wanted to make people care about us, all of us." The clip went viral within hours, not because it was dramatic, but because it was raw, real, honest. Even some of her harshest critics admitted privately that they felt something shift. For the first time in months, the conversation wasn't about division. It was about understanding. In the following weeks, quiet meetings resumed. Engelbert and union leaders began drafting a new framework for the league's future, one that ensured fair marketing representation, revenue transparency, and improved benefits. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And for Caitlin Clark, the storm finally began to settle. She still faced criticism. She always would. But something had changed. The fans who once defended her blindly began to listen. The veterans who once resented her began to see the pressure she carried. By the time the next season tipped off, the league looked different. Tougher, wiser, more united. And as Caitlin Clark stood at center court for the season opener, the crowd roared, not just for her, but for the game itself. It wasn't the fairy tale anyone had imagined. It was messy, painful, and real. But maybe that's what growth looks like. Because in the end, Caitlin Clark didn't just save women's basketball. She forced it to confront its truth, to face its fractures, its pride, its pain, and to rise above them. The WNBA hadn't broken. It had transformed. And somewhere in the quiet after the final buzzer, Caitlin smiled. Not as a symbol, not as a savior, but simply as a player who loved the game enough to endure its storm.
Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more dives into Hollywood's hidden history.